It's strange how quickly your home can stop feeling like, well, home. It looks the same, mostly. Same couch where Grace learned to climb. Same kitchen counter stained with marker from that one art project disaster. But Vanessa's gone now, staying with her parents. And the air just feels thick and wrong, heavy. Like the calm before a really nasty storm, except the storm already hit. And this is just the suffocating humidity left behind. I find myself replaying everything, a constant loop spinning in my head, trying to pinpoint where the track skipped. We were supposed to be college sweethearts, the ones who navigated cultural differences and family doubts. 6 years married, a beautiful 4-year-old daughter. Vanessa was my first everything, my best friend, the person I thought I knew completely. How could I have been so wrong? The Vegas trip looms large in this mental replay, that annual corporate retreat. Usually I'd arrange my schedule, we'd tack on a few days, make it our time, reconnect. We needed that this year, badly. Vanessa's job, it's demanding. The work-life balance was non-existent, bleeding into our evenings, our weekends. She was stressed, distant. The retreat felt like maybe, just maybe, a chance to reset. But Grace, our daughter, she has this major separation anxiety, especially with travel. It just wasn't happening this year. I stayed home, holding down the fort. A bummer. Yeah, but you choose your battles, right? That's what we said. Except Vanessa started acting off, way off, even before she left. Then during the trip, it got worse. Our calls were rushed, clipped. Texts went unread for hours, even important ones about Grace, while her social media showed her living it up. Networking, she'd said. Important connections. I get it, I do. But this felt different than previous years. This felt avoidant. And then there was Grace's birthday. It fell during the retreat week. Vanessa promised, Pinky swore, a special FaceTime celebration. Grace talked about it for days, picked out the cupcake she wanted to show Mommy. The time comes. Grace is bouncing in her chair, wearing her sparkly party dress, and Vanessa backs out. Last minute, said she had people up in her room after a seminar, networking, couldn't step away, it wouldn't look good. She actually asked me, voice tight with false patience, if I could explain it to Grace, like she wanted my permission to shatter our daughter's heart for a work mingle. I told her it was her decision, her promise to break, but she'd be the one explaining it. The fallout was immediate. Grace sobbing, confused, asking why Mommy didn't want to see her birthday cupcake. Vanessa on the phone, getting flustered, defensive, saying I wasn't being fair, putting her in a difficult position. Then she just hung up, left me there, holding our crying daughter, feeling this cold dread pooling in my stomach. She promised a rain check call the next day. Never happened. Just more pictures online smiling, networking. That incident. It rubbed me the wrong way. Doesn't even cover it. It felt like a betrayal of something fundamental. And it colored how I saw everything else. Especially the pictures. The ones featuring Caleb, M23, the recent hire she was supposed to be mentoring. He was everywhere. Attached to her hip. One photo, his arm slung way too comfortably around her waist, a proprietary grin on his face. This is the guy who texted her after a work assignment that she was exactly the kind of woman he needs to keep him in check. She'd brushed it off, said he was awkward, needed guidance. She felt sorry for him, taking him under her wing. Right. Then, the day before she came home, the phone call, complaining about a bruise on her neck. Stressed, over and over, it was a bug bite. From Vegas? A bug bite that bad? In a casino hotel? Alarm bells were clanging, deafeningly loud. When she walked through the door, tired, forcing a smile for Grace, I saw it. No bug bite in the world looks like that. Dark purple, angry, nestled right in that soft spot below her ear. A Hickey. Blatant. Obvious. She tried to brush it off, fussing over Grace, avoiding my eyes. Later, when Grace was asleep, I confronted her. Gently at first. Then, as she clung to the ridiculous bug bite story, with more force. Vanessa, that's not a bug bite. Let's be honest here. Her eyes flashed. What are you implying? The accusation dripped with manufactured outrage. I'm not implying anything. I'm saying that looks exactly like a Hickey, and considering how weird you've been, I need you to tell me the truth. That's when it exploded. The accusations flew. I was insecure, jealous, looking for a fight because I was resentful about her career, using the missed birthday call as ammunition. Infidelity is a sore subject. Her dad's history hangs heavy there, and she wielded it like a weapon. How dare I accuse her? After everything. Didn't I trust her? The fight went nowhere. An impasse built on lies. She started wearing turtlenecks, showering Grace and me with this frantic, over-the-top affection that felt utterly fake. The silence between us was deafening. I couldn't live like that. I moved into the guest room. Told her I couldn't share a bed with someone I couldn't trust, someone who thought I was stupid enough to believe such a flimsy lie. That finally broke something. A few nights later, she came to the guest room door, eyes red-rimmed. The confession tumbled out, messy, tearful. She'd hooked up with Caleb on Grace's birthday, after ditching the FaceTime call, making out, on top of clothes stuff, him going down on her. It stopped, she claimed, only when he called her by my pet name for her. Snapped her back to reality. Saw the Hickey in the bathroom mirror. Freaked out. Kicked him out after he joked about it being her souvenir. Guilt, she said. That's why she avoided me. Shame. Doesn't know why she did it. Doesn't blame Caleb. Not really. Feels broken, turning into her work-obsessed, unfaithful father. Wants to blame her parents. Their messed-up dynamic, but knows it was her choice. Her decision to entertain his advances, to cross that line, to lie. She swore she wasn't unhappy with me, with us. Offered everything to fix it. Quit her job, go to HR, counseling, anything. A desperate plea, a rally cry for us. But all I felt was numb, cold, like looking at a stranger wearing my wife's face. The betrayal wasn't just the physical act, it was the lies. The callous disregard for Grace's feelings, the disrespect. I don't recognize you, I told her. The words flat, devoid of the fire I maybe should have felt. It's not just the cheating, it's how you treated our daughter, like she was an inconvenience. Tears streamed down her face. Failed wife, failed mom, loves us beyond words, wants our family intact, but the trust was gone, pulverized. I told her we needed to separate, reevaluate. She fought it, pleaded to stay in the house, work through it together. I stood firm. A separation was happening. Either she left, or I took Grace and went. She chose to leave, moving in with her parents, a place I know she finds difficult. Her only condition, don't take Grace away from her. And that's where the original post left off. Me, reeling in the aftermath, focusing on Grace, taking it one step at a time. That numbness persisted for a few days, a shield against the raw agony underneath. The first few weeks of separation were a masterclass in awkwardness. Handoffs of Grace at the door, brief, stilted conversations about logistics. Vanessa often looked tearful, putting on a brave face for Grace, sometimes attempting small talk with me, testing the waters. Her mom, my mother-in-law, called frequently. Always supportive of us in the past, now she walked a careful line, acknowledging Vanessa's screw-up but gently advocating for forgiveness, for counseling, reminding me how Vanessa always called me her anchor. It felt cloying, like pressure wrapped in concern. Grace was confused, understandably. Why is Mommy crying? Why doesn't Mommy live here anymore? Is Mommy mad at me? Each question was a fresh stab. Vanessa would sometimes arrive for pickup looking exhausted, makeup smudged. She'd put on this bright, almost frantic performance for Grace, smothering her with hugs and gifts. It felt desperate. Then came the little manipulations, subtle at first. Vanessa would forget something essential Grace needed for her visit, forcing an extra interaction, a chance to linger, to look pathetic. Or she'd relay messages through Grace. Mommy says she misses reading bedtime stories here. Mommy said maybe Daddy could come over for dinner at Grandma's so she won't be sad. I shut that down quickly, telling Vanessa directly that we communicate adult matters like adults, not through our 4-year-old. Her response was sharp, defensive. God, can't you see I'm trying? I'm just trying to make this less painful for her. You're making this so much harder than it needs to be. That was a recurring theme. I was the difficult one. I was the one holding on to anger. I wasn't being fair. The attempts at gaslighting continued, less overt than the bug bite lie, but persistent. The real shift, the moment the ice truly began to form in my veins, came during a tense phone call about dividing some minor shared assets. We were disagreeing about something stupid, a piece of furniture, and Vanessa suddenly snapped, "You know what? Just take it. Take everything. It's clear you just want to punish me. Fine. Maybe if I have nothing left, you'll finally be satisfied." I stayed calm, my voice level. "Vanessa, this isn't about punishment. It's about separating our lives because you chose to betray our marriage." And then it slipped out, venomous and raw, a flash of what she must truly think underneath the performative remorse. "Oh my God, will you let it go already?" So I made out with a guy. It was a stupid, drunken mistake in Vegas. It meant nothing. It's not like I blew up our lives. You're the one doing that by dragging this out. Honestly, sometimes you make me feel so suffocated, I just need to breathe. Silence hung heavy on the line. She backtracked immediately, voice choked with fake tears. "I didn't mean that. You twisted my words. I'm just so stressed. I don't know what I'm saying. Please don't." But I heard it. It meant nothing. You're suffocating me. You're blowing this up. That was the real Vanessa talking. Not the crying victim, but the selfish woman who prioritized a moment of cheap thrills over her husband and child, and who, deep down, resented me for even being hurt by it. The numbness cracked, replaced by a white-hot surge of fury, quickly followed by an unnerving glacial calm. Okay, now I saw clearly. Around the same time, spurred by a gnawing unease her words had ignited, I did something I hadn't before. I wasn't actively snooping. Not yet, but the company portal where employees submitted expense reports. We shared an account login for convenience when tracking reimbursements before, mostly for me checking her submissions for household budgeting. On a grim hunch, I logged in, looked up the Vegas retreat report she'd filed just before the implosion. Most of it looked standard: flight, hotel block, approved meal stipends. But then, under miscellaneous travel and entertainment, hidden amongst taxi fares and client coffee receipts were other charges. A room service bill for two, late at night on Grace's birthday, long after the seminar she'd used as an excuse. Another charge from a different, much swankier bar across town during a time she'd claimed to be at a mandatory team-building dinner. And then, the kicker. A pharmacy charge time-stamped the morning after the hookup, not for aspirin. The item description was partially redacted, but the price point in store strongly suggested Plan B. So it wasn't just making out. It wasn't just on top of clothes stuff. It likely went further. And she'd been calculating enough, even in her supposed panic, to cover her tracks contractively. The confession had been another curated lie, minimizing her actions to make them more palatable, more forgivable. The trifecta was complete. The emotional manipulation using our daughter, the accidental verbal slip revealing her true lack of empathy and blame shifting, and now concrete proof of deeper lies and calculations surrounding the affair itself. The last vestiges of the man who loved Vanessa, the husband desperate for answers and reconciliation, died in that moment. Something inside me shifted definitively. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was a quiet click, like a heavy vault door sealing shut. The hurt was still there, a deep, aching wound, but it was now overlaid with something colder, sharper: resolve. The goal was no longer figuring out us or navigating the pain. The goal was retribution. Vanessa wasn't the woman I married. She was a stranger who happened to look like her, a person capable of profound selfishness, betrayal, and breathtaking deceit. And she had hurt my daughter. That sealed it. My internal monologue changed. No more confusion, no more second-guessing, just clarity. I stood in the guest room that night, the temporary setup feeling suddenly permanent, and made a silent vow, not fueled by explosive anger but by an icy determination. This wasn't about yelling or causing a messy scene. This was about consequences. Vanessa wanted to invoke her father's legacy? Fine. Let her experience the fallout of wrecking a family. She prioritized networking and momentary pleasure over Grace. She'd learned the cost. She lied, manipulated, treated me like a fool. The world would see the truth. My revenge wouldn't be random destruction. It would be crafted, poetic justice. Her actions mirrored back at her. Every tactic filtered through the lens of protecting Grace above all, ensuring my daughter was shielded, and Vanessa's capacity to inflict further harm was neutralized. And ultimately, the driving force was simple, cold, and personal. I needed to make Vanessa feel what I felt. The humiliation, the rug pulled out from under her, the sickening realization of being utterly exposed and alone after shattering the trust of the one person who was supposed to be her anchor. The shift from grieving husband to methodical planner was disturbingly smooth. My analytical mind, usually applied to work projects, now focused on Operation Souvenir. Information was key. My first unexpected source turned out to be Grace herself. Not through direct questioning, I'd never put her in that position, but through careful listening. Kids observe everything. During our weekends, she'd drop little comments, unfiltered observations about her time at Grandma and Grandpa's where Vanessa was staying. Mommy cries on the phone a lot. To whom? Caleb? Her boss? Friends? Mommy told Grandma she was so tired from work. That's why she's grumpy, maintaining the victim overworked narrative. Caleb isn't Mommy's friend anymore? Mommy looked mad when Grandma asked. Aha, friction exists. Useful. Grandpa says Mommy needs to be more careful with money. Financial stress? Parental disapproval? Each innocent remark was a puzzle piece, carefully stored away. My second avenue was more direct, leveraging shared history, those expense reports. I went back through the portal, this time comparing the Vegas report meticulously against her calendar from that week, still synced to my devices then, and against her social media posts I'd screenshotted during that gut-wrenching period. Discrepancies piled up. Times she claimed to be in mandatory sessions matched restaurant charges across town. Team dinner receipts were time-stamped during periods she'd ignored my calls. The Plan B purchase wasn't the only red flag. There were solo taxi rides to areas nowhere near the convention center late at night. I cross-referenced hotel names and bar locations, building a timeline far more damning than her tearful partial confession. This wasn't just a one-off mistake with Caleb. It was a pattern of ditching obligation, seeking out entertainment, and potentially other encounters, all meticulously hidden behind expense claims. She wasn't just cheating. She was potentially defrauding her company while doing it. Documented. Saved. Armed with Grace's observations, providing emotional context and the expense reports, providing hard data, I started setting up the tools. Burner email accounts with non-attributable names, a separate cheap prepaid phone, VPN for masking online activity. I mapped out Vanessa's professional network based on LinkedIn and things she'd told me over the years. Who was her mentor? Who were her rivals? Who did she perceive as important? Where were the vulnerabilities? Time for the first move. Stage 1 had to be subtle, deniable, designed to create ripples, not waves. Undermine confidence, create paranoia, apply pressure indirectly. First, I targeted her professional image. I identified a couple of contacts in her wider network, people she respected but wasn't necessarily close friends with, known industry gossips she sometimes complained about. Using an anonymous email, I sent carefully worded messages, disguised as tentative concern from a supposed mutual acquaintance. Subject: Hope Vanessa's okay. Body: Hi. Contact name: Heard through the grapevine Vanessa. Last name seemed really off on focus during recent industry event or project. Hope everything's all right. Personally. Just seemed unlike her usual sharp self. Maybe just stress. Anyway, thought I'd mention it. Vague, plausibly deniable. Enough to plant a seed of doubt, a question mark next to her name in circles where reputation is everything. Second, I weaponized the MIL connection. My mother-in-law, bless her meddling heart, genuinely thought she was helping save the marriage. During one of her calls, checking in on me and subtly probing for reconciliation, I sighed heavily, played the worried, confused husband. I don't know. Miles' name. Vanessa seems so stressed, so distant still. I worry it's more than just us. I overheard her mention Caleb's name on a call the other day. Sounded like there was some tension. I even heard a weird rumor flying around her office. Something about Caleb trying to get ahead, maybe angling for a promotion near her level. I hope that's not adding to her pressure. She already feels like she's sacrificed so much for that Vegas networking trip. Pure bait. I knew Emil couldn't resist relaying this concern to Vanessa, likely with her own dramatic spin. Let Vanessa wonder if Caleb was gunning for her. Let her stress about office politics on top of the separation fallout. Let the paranoia fester. Create friction where there might already be cracks. The ripples started almost immediately. During the next couple of awkward handoffs, Vanessa seemed different. Not remorseful, but wired. Her eyes darted around. She snapped at Grace over something minor, then immediately overcompensated with hugs, her smile brittle. Then came the phone calls. Not to me, directly accusing me. She wasn't there yet. But the calls to her mother intensified, and MIL couldn't help but relay snippets back to me, cloaked in concern. Vanessa was apparently convinced someone at work was out to get her. People were acting weird. Did I hear anything? Fishing, likely prompted by MIL. She complained bitterly about the unfairness of it all, how she was working so hard, juggling the separation, and now this. The narrative was clear. Poor Vanessa, beset on all sides, victim of circumstance and possibly jealous colleagues, or an unstable husband. The manipulation attempts towards me also ramped up, particularly using Grace. There were more accidental, lingered conversations at pickup, more attempts to paint me as cold and unforgiving in front of our daughter. Grace misses our family cuddles, doesn't she? Daddy doesn't like cuddling with Mommy anymore. Sharp, quiet words from me shut that down each time, but the attempts were noted. She was feeling the pressure, lashing out, defaulting to her most toxic patterns. Blame shifting and emotional blackmail. She hadn't connected the dots back to me yet. The anonymous concern, the Emil-filtered rumor, it was all external pressure as far as she knew. Perfect. Phase 1 was working. The seeds of doubt were sown professionally. Paranoia was building personally, and she was reacting exactly as predicted, by becoming more frantic, more manipulative, and likely alienating the very people she was running to for support. The carefully constructed facade was showing cracks. And I hadn't even begun the real demolition yet. The thought brought a grim, cold satisfaction. Stage 2 planning began to solidify in my mind, focusing squarely on that fragile relationship with her boss, the one she valued so highly. The house of cards was trembling. It just needed a precise, devastating push. Phase 1 had ripple effects, just as intended. Vanessa was definitely feeling the heat. Her calls to her mother became more frequent, more fraught, laced with paranoia and victimhood, snippets of which inevitably found their way back to me via Mill's concerned updates. The subtle digs about her competence seemed to have landed somewhere, and the manufactured tension regarding Caleb had clearly unnerved her. She was off balance, defaulting to manipulation with me and Grace, and painting herself as besieged to her parents. Excellent, but the core structure remained. She still had her job, her carefully cultivated professional image, likely leaning on it harder than ever, as a source of stability while her personal life fractured. The initial attacks were just reconnaissance fire, probing defenses. Now it was time to target the main support beam, reviewing everything. Grace's innocent intel, the damning expense reports cross-referenced with Vanessa's own social media breadcrumbs, her predictable reactions to Phase 1's pressure, solidified my next move. It wasn't enough to just make her paranoid at work. I needed to sever the root of her professional credibility. And the crucial insight, the glaring vulnerability I'd zeroed in on, was her relationship with her boss, Rebecca, let's call her that, who also functioned as a mentor. Vanessa had always spoken about Rebecca with a mixture of admiration and slight fear. Rebecca was demanding, old school, big on integrity and loyalty. Vanessa worked hard to impress her, crafting this image of herself as a diligent rising star overcoming challenges, like, presumably, a difficult separation from a controlling husband, a narrative I suspected she was already subtly weaving. Rebecca's backing was critical for Vanessa's advancement. If that trust vaporized, if Rebecca saw the real Vanessa, the liar, the cheat, the potential expense cheat, the woman capable of breathtakingly poor judgment, her career at that company, possibly in that tight-knit industry, would be toast. How to reach Rebecca, though? Direct anonymous contact was too risky, too easily traced or dismissed. HR was an option, but potentially slow and bureaucratic, maybe allowing Vanessa time to spin another narrative. No, the attack vector needed to be more insidious, more personal. It needed to come from a direction Vanessa wouldn't expect, hitting the foundation of trust she relied on, and that led me straight back to her parents. My plan coalesced, centered on exposing hypocrisy via family. Vanessa's parents, particularly her mother, were her primary emotional crutch right now, albeit a strained one. They were getting the curated, victim-centric version of events. If they saw undeniable proof of the depth of Vanessa's deceit, not just the affair, but the calculated lies, the potential fraud woven into the expense reports, the sheer callousness, it would detonate their carefully managed world. And the fallout, the sheer emotional explosion from her parents, was the key. Either they, in their distress and disillusionment, would communicate their horror upwards, perhaps questioning Vanessa's stability to Rebecca out of concern, or Vanessa herself, reeling from the familial implosion, would crack under the pressure and make a fatal error with her mentor. The execution required precision and plausible deniability for me. I couldn't just email Fiel/Meal damning evidence. That pointed right back. Instead, I decided to use my own mother as an unwitting conduit. My parents and Vanessa's parents weren't close, but they were cordial, occasionally exchanging pleasantries, especially now with shared grandparent duties, however awkward. My mom knew the basics of the separation, that Vanessa had been unfaithful and lied, but not the dirty documented details. I waited for a moment when my mom called, expressing sympathy about how hard this must be. I let my voice crack, played the heartbroken but trying to be strong son. Then I confided in her. Mom, it's worse than I even let on. I didn't want to burden you, but I found some things, expense reports from her Vegas trip. It wasn't just the one time with that guy. She was lying about where she was, charging things, late nights, bars across town when she claimed she was at work dinners. There's even a pharmacy charge for, well, on Grace's birthday weekend. I paused, letting the implication hang, and she expensed it all. I don't understand how someone could do that. Lie so much, not just to me, but potentially to her company. It scares me, Mom. Who is she? I forwarded my mom one carefully selected damning piece of evidence, the expense report snippet showing the late-night room service for two, alongside the pharmacy charge, maybe with a brief, heartbroken note. Found this sorting finances. Still processing. I knew my mother. Kind, empathetic, but also a bit of a gossip and deeply protective of me. She'd be horrified. And knowing the cordial but distant relationship with Vanessa's parents, she wouldn't call them directly to accuse. But would she subtly mention her worry about Vanessa's estate or judgment to my dad? Absolutely. Would my dad, perhaps more pragmatic, feel a vague sense of obligation to make sure the other grandparents weren't totally in the dark if their daughter was potentially involved in something shady at work? It was a calculated risk, banking on inter-family awkwardness and parental concern, creating an indirect information transfer. The goal wasn't for my parents to confront Vanessa's parents directly, but for the knowledge to seep across, poisoning the well. Alternatively, or concurrently, I focused on my mother-in-law. During one of her inevitable check-in calls, I let slip, sounding exhausted and defeated. I just don't know what to believe anymore in Miles' name. Vanessa keeps saying it was a one-time mistake, but I saw things on the expense reports, charges at places she wasn't supposed to be, times that don't add up. I'm worried she's not just lying to me, but maybe got caught up in something else. Is she okay? Is she gambling? Or is this Caleb guy more involved than she's saying? Her judgment just seems so off, planting seeds of doubt about finances, judgment, potential deeper issues, things guaranteed to prickle a mother's anxiety, especially given Vanessa was living under their roof again. Let Miles' own worries and probing questions add pressure on Vanessa from home. The linchpin, however, was timing it right. I waited until I knew Vanessa had a major presentation coming up, one she'd mentioned nervously, crucial for her visibility with Rebecca. Then I played my hand with my mother and MIL. Let the familial stress peak just as her professional pressure was highest. It took about a week for the pressure cooker to explode. I didn't hear directly from Vanessa's parents, of course, but the next scheduled handoff with Grace was memorable. Vanessa practically threw Grace's weekend bag at me, face pale, eyes blazing with a terrifying mixture of fury and desperation. "What did you do?" she hissed, keeping her voice low so Grace wouldn't hear, but the venom was unmistakable. "What lies have you been feeding your mother? Feeding mine?" "I don't know what you're talking about, Vanessa," I said calmly, stepping back slightly. "Is everything okay? Okay? Is everything okay?" Her voice cracked. "My parents are treating me like a criminal. My mother went through my laptop. My father is talking about financial audits. They think, what did you tell them?" "I told my mother I was heartbroken finding evidence you lied about more than just the affair," I said, holding her gaze, "including potentially misleading your company on expense reports. If she shared her concerns, that's on her. Sounds like maybe your parents are just seeing the truth." Her face crumpled. "You bastard! You want to destroy me. You're trying to ruin my life." "You already did a pretty good job of that yourself, Vanessa," I replied, my voice ice cold, starting with lying about a Hickey and breaking our daughter's heart. I picked up Grace's bag and turned away, leaving her standing there shaking, tears of rage streaming down her face. The fallout wasn't immediate at her work, but the cracks spread fast. Just as I'd gambled, the parental implosion had catastrophic knock-on effects. I pieced it together later from various sources, mutual acquaintances, LinkedIn updates, eventually the grim satisfaction of official confirmation. Vanessa, reeling from the confrontation with her parents, who apparently saw concrete proof that shattered her victim narrative, went into work an emotional wreck. Trying to maintain composure for her big presentation in front of Rebecca, she failed spectacularly. Someone mentioned she broke down crying during a planning meeting. Someone else heard her having a loud, unprofessional argument on her phone in the hallway, likely with her parents. Crucially, her mentor, Rebecca, noticed the instability, coupled with the subtle seeds of doubt already planted about Vanessa's focus, and perhaps a deeply uncomfortable call from Vanessa's distraught mother, just checking if Vanessa was all right because she seemed terribly unstable. Rebecca's trust evaporated. An internal review or performance management plan was initiated, likely triggered by Rebecca's loss of confidence, and maybe anonymous flags regarding expense irregularities I ensured found their way to the right HR inbox around the same time. Caleb inevitably got caught in the splash zone, his unprofessionalism and poor judgment now viewed through the lens of Vanessa's disgrace. Both were suspended pending investigation, then quietly let go weeks later. No fanfare, just gone. Their digital profiles vanished from the company website. Adding a layer of beautiful bureaucratic irony, about a month after Vanessa was fired, an email went out from HR to all staff, detailing updated guidelines on expense reporting and new mandatory training on professional conduct and supervisor-supervisee relationships, citing recent learnings without naming names. Vanessa and Caleb's legacy, a mandatory compliance module. Perfect. The most quietly satisfying yet heart-wrenching consequence came later. During a weekend visit, Grace, with the brutal honesty only a child possesses, looked up at Vanessa, who was trying to explain vaguely why she didn't have her busy office job anymore. Grace just tilted her head and asked, "Is it because you lied about the work parties like Daddy said?" The color drained from Vanessa's face. I hadn't explicitly told Grace that, but kids synthesize information in startling ways. Vanessa had no answer, just devastating silence. Vanessa undoubtedly suspected my involvement. The timing, the specific nature of the information that reached her parents, she wasn't stupid, but she couldn't prove anything. The methods were indirect, laundered through parental concern and her own unstable reactions. There was no smoking gun pointing directly at me. The true reveal, the confirmation she likely both craved and dreaded, came months later, in the most unexpected, quietly brutal way possible. We were navigating the awkward final stages of the divorce mediation. Tensions were high. Outside the formal sessions, contact was minimal. One Sunday afternoon, when Vanessa dropped Grace back home, Grace was chattering about her weekend. She'd drawn pictures, including one of the Vegas skyline, a holdover fascination from the trip she missed. I had, over weeks, very occasionally, woven tiny, specific, factual details gleaned from the expense reports into innocuous conversations about my own work travel, or hypothetical stories. Nothing accusatory towards Vanessa, just normalizing certain details in Grace's environment. Things like, wow, Daddy had a meeting near that fancy waterfall bar place today, or some work dinners aren't boring, sometimes they have music, like that Coyote Ugly place Daddy saw on a work trip sign once. Names of places Vanessa actually charged expenses from when she was supposedly elsewhere. That Sunday, Grace held up her Vegas drawing. Look, Daddy, there's the big hotel. Mommy, did you go to the funny Coyote place with the music when you were there for work, like Daddy saw on his trip? Vanessa froze. Her eyes snapped towards me, wide with dawning horror and a sickening understanding. The Coyote Ugly Saloon was one of the specific off-site bar charges from her expense report, miles from her convention hotel, during a time she'd claimed to be at a team event. It was too specific, too random for Grace to invent. Only someone who had seen the receipts, who knew exactly where she'd lied, could have planted that detail, however subtly, into our daughter's vocabulary. She didn't say anything, just stared at me, her face ashen. In that moment, looking into her eyes, I didn't need to say a word. She knew. She knew I'd seen the receipts. She knew I knew the depth of her lies. And she knew, somehow, I had used that knowledge to unravel her life. The reveal wasn't an accusation. It was a quiet, devastating confirmation delivered by the innocent voice of the child she betrayed. She scrambled for her keys and practically fled, leaving Grace looking confused at the doorway. Why did Mommy look sad? Months melted into a year. The divorce was finalized. The dust didn't so much settle as get swept into messy piles in the corners of Vanessa's life. Caleb vanished completely. Heard he moved back in with his parents across the country, career prospects in tatters. Vanessa's situation was bleak. As predicted by the trajectory of her blame shifting, she seemed stuck in a cycle of blaming others. It was my fault, her parents' fault, Rebecca's fault, the company's fault. Even Grace's innocent question was somehow twisted into my manipulation. Taking responsibility seemed utterly beyond her. This, naturally, hampered any attempt to rebuild professionally or personally. She eventually found some low-level administrative job, completely unrelated to her qualifications. Our co-parenting arrangement was court-ordered and strictly supervised, primarily because her instability and lack of accountability during the separation raised flags. Pickups and drop-offs were brief, functional, devoid of any warmth. She was a mother obligated by law, constantly reminded of the trust she'd broken and the consequences she couldn't escape. The most chilling aspect? Observing her transformation, or rather, the cementing of her flaws. Stripped of her career and the facade she'd built, she retreated into bitterness and resentment. She truly, ironically, became exactly like the father she claimed to despise, isolated by her own actions, reputation damaged, perceived as untrustworthy, wallowing in victimhood instead of seeking growth. A cautionary tale? Indeed. Grace, thankfully, thrived, shielded from the worst of the toxicity, secure in a stable routine with me. She was a happy, resilient kid. The questions about Mommy lessened over time. She understood on some level that Mommy lived elsewhere and that things were different now. My focus remained squarely on her well-being. Operation Souvenir was complete. The burner emails were deleted, the prepaid phone tossed, the mental files on Vanessa's vulnerabilities closed. The divorce papers were signed, sealed, delivered. I meticulously rebuilt my finances, focused on my career, and poured my energy into creating a joyful, stable life for Grace. Did I feel good? Not exactly. Good wasn't the right word. There was a grim satisfaction, yes, a sense that a profound injustice had been met with carefully calibrated consequences. The rage had burned itself out, leaving behind ashes and a sort of emptiness, quickly filled by the demands of single parenthood and the quiet joy of Grace's laughter. Looking back, the whole ordeal reshaped me. The naive trust, the belief in shared history trumping all, that was gone. In its place, I saw relationships, loyalty, even love through a different, harsher lens now. Not necessarily pessimistic, but realistic. Aware of the potential for darkness, the masks people wear, the ease with which trust can be incinerated. This clarity was freeing in a way, no longer burdened by illusions. My priorities were crystal clear. Grace's happiness and security above all else. Was the revenge worth it? In the cold light of this new dawn, yes. Not because it brought Vanessa back or healed the initial wound, but because it established boundaries written in stone. It demonstrated that actions have severe, unavoidable consequences. It protected Grace from growing up normalizing deceit. And maybe, just maybe, it cauterized my own wound enough to allow me to move forward, scarred but not broken, carrying the weight of my actions but clear-eyed about the path ahead. The Vegas souvenir wasn't hers to keep. The final bill was mine to deliver, and it was paid in full. That's all for this story. I'll be back with another one. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. It motivates me to create more content like this.